Good morning, student. Today we have a second chapter that is related to the era of one party dominance. Means after the independence, how Congress party dominate the Indian politics, Indian government, especially in the national government or central government and state government. How this dominance continue and how the other parties played the role to end up the Congress dominance. How elections are held in India, because India have the lot of problems, lot of challenges in India. So these kind of things we will discuss by this chapter. First, the challenges of building democracy. In the previous chapter, we will study that there are the serious challenges for India to feel, because India is a revolting country, because Indian peoples are poor, they have no education, so it is always challenge for a country to build up. So mostly the countries who have the similar conditions, they always prefers the to take the one party dominance, because they feel that national unity is first and every time, and because they know that the democracy will always introduce the difference and conflicts, and they always think that, because these countries feels that democracy always introduce the difference and conflicts. So after gaining the freedoms from a long colonial rules, they always think, always take the government, and that is related to the non-democratic rules and other forms like a nominal democracy, monarchy, army rules. And they always promise with their peoples that after normalization, all the conditions they set up towards the democracy, but it was always set the democracy in these countries, because after some time these, not just these nominal persons or army rules, have take up its steps, and it is always difficult to resolve the democracy in these nations. But Indian conditions are too much different. India had to take a different faith, because India always promised with their peoples that they can set up the democracy in India. And our leaders are always conscious of the critical rules of the politics in any democracy, but they did not see the politics as a problem. They see it as a way of solving the problems. Every society is need to decide how it will be governed and regulate itself. In India's, there are the different groups, so they have the difference of lot of, and only the way to solve these difference and conflicts within the society and the different groups, it was the only way to set up the democracy in India. So Indian government set its term to take the democracy in India. Now now we have the things that how these challenges are accepted in India, how they can check the democratic rules in India. In the last year in the plus one political science, you have to study that how Indian constitution was drafted, how constitutional committee was worked for making the Indian constitution. A well made constitution is there. So Indian constitution was made with after a long and long discussion, and more near to the 3 years, and ready to sign on the 26th November 1949, and applied on the 26th January 1950. And it was then necessary to install a democratic government which are elected by the people. But constitution was laid, all machinery was set up, but it was difficult to take or set up the elections in India, because India is totally indifferent from the other countries which have the democracy, which start the democracy. Then the Election Commission of India was set up in the January 1950, and Sukumar Sen, who was the first chief election commissioner in India. So far, they set the term to conduct the elections in near to the 1950. But after some time, election commissions discovered that it was not easy to hold the free and fair elections in a country where we have a vast country, lot of differences there, and they have to work from the beginning. So they start to limitation or delimitations or drawing the boundaries of electoral constituencies. They prepare the electoral rolls, make the voter list, and it took a lot of time. And after then, the first draft was ready. That time they think or they feel that only 40 lakh women who have not recorded in the voter list and but eligible for the voting, and the women simply listed as a wife of, as a daughters of, and then no person's name is there, simply blanks, whom's wife she is, whom's daughter she is, and left it because India is feel the partition. Lot of families are broken during the partitions. Then and election commission rejected and ready to prepare another electoral roll. After that, when the election was held, almost 7 crore voters who are eligible for the voters for the voting, and almost 3,200 MLAs are elected from for the state legislative assemblies, and 489 MLAs for the Lok Sabha. During that time, out of the 7 crore, only the 15% voters are who are eligible for the voter or the vote cast to vote are literate or educated. So it was difficult for India to hold the election or to think about the election. Almost 3 lakh officials or the polling staff helped the election commission to successfully run after the independence. So it is not just for the size to conduct the elections as the normal countries, but it was vast big test for the democracy in that country which is poor, which is illiterate country. It is different from the other countries who have the democracy, like Europe and the North Americas, where the democracy is running successfully. So condition between the Europe and India is too much different. In there they have the every person have the proper education, every person knows about his right. But India, it's a first step for India, who is going to set the election, who is going to provide the democracy. So in these days we are using the EVM, electronic voting machines, but it was not started during the beginning of time. It was the time when in the 1952 when the first election was held. Then for each candidate there will be a polling booth box is there. For each candidate there is a election booth or election box is there, and election symbol is allotted for that, and a voter was given a blank paper, ballot paper, which held or which provide the information regarding the candidate, and almost 20 lakh seal box was used for that purpose. And the proceeding officer, who is from Punjab, described that each box had its candidate symbol inside and outside, and it displayed the names of the candidate in Urdu, Hindi and Punjabi, along with the constituency's name, polling station name, polling booth name, and the paper seal was provided that describes the candidate's sign, candidate names, and was signed by the proceeding officer. Then the voter was given to the voter, and voter put or marks it and put it into the box whom candidate he is going to select. After that, there was difficulty to fix the symbol or label the boxes, or the rubber stamp sandpaper was used, and or the piece of bricks to shape the constituencies or the shape the polling stations or the belt of the polling station. It was too much difficult for the first time, and it took the manuals of a proceeding officer or a polling officers to conduct the elections. Then after the election, the same day for election, each candidate or have the separate election box was there. It was used for the first two election, what means during the election of 1952 or elections in the 1957. This way was used. After that, the election procedure was changed. Then a sample box is used, ballot box is used for all candidate, and voter was provided a slip, and where they have a list of the all the candidate who is contrasting in the election, and voter have to select his choice candidate. And this was used from 1962 to 1990. And after that, the EVM was introduced in India, and the 2004 it was successfully run all over the India and used the EVMs. So during that time, election was conducting a election was a challenge for India's, and many editors take it as the biggest gambles in history. And even the Jawaharlal Nehru feels that would live in the confess the failures of universal adult franchises in India's. And even elections was postponed twice and finally held in the October 1951 to February 1952. And elections in most parts of the country voted in the January 1952. It took the period of 6 months for campaigning, polling, counting the votes, and 4 candidates for the each seats were there. Then almost more than half of its eligible voters cast their vote. So results were declared. These were as accepted as fair because they have the lot of problems there. Even the Indian peoples are not proper education, proper guidance, and even the polling officers or the election officers are even not much trained. So it was conducted by the lot of struggles and lot of hard works of election commission. Even it proved the wrong to all those persons who have think that Indian are not eligible for running a democracy in India. It turns them wrong. And even the Hindustan Times claims that there was a universal agreement that Indian peoples have conducted themselves to admire beliefs in the largest experiments in democratic elections of the world. So it was always a landmark for democracy in the world. It proves them wrong that who feel that election or the democratic elections were not held or properly in that country who is suffering from poverty and lack of education. It proved that democracy can run in any countries, even in the poor countries. So Congress dominance in the first 3 general elections. So results of the first general elections did not surprise anyone, as we knows that Congress parties always would lead that elections because they are popular, they are have the legacies of national movement, they parts the all over the countries, his organizations spread in all over the countries. And that time Jawaharlal Nehru was popular and charismatic personalities there, and he led the Congress, he led the countries into all country, even in the state elections he led the Congress parties. And when the results came, results were declared in 1952, then Congress party surprised the many more. He won the 364 seats out of the 489 seats. And no other parties have the challenge to Congress party. Only the Communist party who terms the next in the seats, who got only the 16 seats there. Then there is the Samajwadi party or the Socialist party in India. State elections was same as the general elections. Mostly in the states they have the Congress government in the majority, but in the only the states like the Travancore or Cochin or today it's a part of Kerala, Madras and Odisha have the Congress feels they have the lack of majority or near to majority, but only in these states or in the Madras, Odisha, also the government of Congress was formed. So Congress was dominant in all the elections from state level, from national level. And after that, Jawaharlal Nehru became India's first prime minister after conducting the first general election. Now we take the after the first general elections of 1952. From 1952 to 1962, or means in the second general election that was held in 1957, and third general election that was held in 1962. Congress party have the dominant and same position, winning the 3/4 of the seats. No opposition party even get the 1/10 of the number of seats. Lot of state assemblies Congress dominant, but in the few cases the Congress failed to get the majority. That was in the 1957 when the in the Kerala Congress made the state government by making the agreement with the CPI, Communist Party of India. In the other states, Congress have the control. They have the control from national to state government. Even the Congress party was winning there, getting the 3 out of the 4 every 4 seats, but they did not get the half of the voters. Their vote percentage is going to low and low by the day and day. In the 1952, Congress gets the 74% seats, but he only gets the 45% of the votes. And the second party, Socialist Party, who is the second largest party in the terms of votes, gets the 10% of the voters and only get the 3% of the seats. How this work? It was only that the Congress have to share the voting with the other non-Congress candidates, as the non-Congress voters or the voters from who did not want to vote to Congress was divided with the different parties. That is why the Congress voters vote share was more against almost 55% voters who did not want to vote to the Congress. Even that the Congress dominant in the first 3 elections in the 1952, 1957, 1962. Then the second largest party of that time, that is the Socialist Party. Socialist Party have the mass movement stage in the Indian National Congress in the pre-independence era. And Congress Party, the Congress Socialist Party was formed within the Congress in the 1932, a group of young persons who wanted to more radical, a more revolutionary ways. But in the 1948, the Congress amended and end up the dual membership. It forced to the socialist group to separate from Congress and built a socialist party in 1948. So party performance was disappointed to its supporters, who gets only the 10% votes and near to the 3% seats in the first general elections. After the most of the socialists believes that ideology of the democratic socialist which distinguishes them from both the Congress and the Communist Party. They criticize the governments because they think that they are favoring the capitalistic, they are landlords, or they are ignoring the workers or the peasants. But in the 1955, when Congress take a turn and takes its weight on the socialist pattern of the society, then it was difficult for the Socialist Party to set its alternative to the Congress. Then, at that time, the some members of like Ram Manohar Loria increased the distance from the Socialist Party and end up the criticism of the Congress Party. But some other thing like Ashok Mehta always think that Socialist Party had to take limited cooperation with the Congress. So there are the many splits, reunions are formed in the socialist parties. In this period, the Congress Party, Socialist Party was divided into the many parties like a Kisan Mazdoor Parja Party, Parja Socialist Party, Surmukti Mukta Congress, Socialist Party, Jayaprakash Narayan, Achirta Vitwadya, Ashok Mehta, Acharya, Narendra Dev, Ram Manohar Loria, S.M. Joshi. These are the main party leaders of the Socialist Party. Even the today's parties that have the socialist ideas like a Samajwadi Party, Rashtriya Janata Party, Janata Dal United, Janata Dal Secular, all are the base with the Socialist Party of the 1952 or who is formed in the 1948. Then, after the natures of the dominance in the first three general elections, it was difficult, it was different from the other parties or the other countries who have the single party dominance. There is a dominance that in India it was always compromising with the democracies, and even in the Congress dominance there was democratic setup with the peoples, and regular periodic elections were held, proper fair and elections are there. But in the other countries like China, Cuba, Syria, constitution permits only the single party to rule there. And some other states like Myanmar, Belarus, Egypt, Ethiopia have the effective one party dominance due to its legal and military measures. So, after the few years, Mexico, South Korea, Taiwan also have the one party dominance state is there. So, distinguish between these two is that in India, these Congress party gets its majority or dominance by not by the constitution but by getting majority by the election, and even the free and fair elections are there. It is similar to the African National Congress Party in the South Africa who gets majority after the end of the white government in there. So, roots of extraordinary success was laid down in the Congress Party's work with for India's freedom struggle. There are a lot of the party leaders have participated or play the front role for India's struggle national movements. They are the main candidates of the Congress during the elections. Even the Congress party have the well organized party. When the other parties thinks about the strategy, Congress starts its campaigns in the elections. In the many parties who are formed during the period of independence or after the independence, but Congress have the different from that. Congress always starts or the set in the first position from that. They always block the advantages, always take the advantages. Even after the independence, it's not increase its length and breadth, but also increase its networking even to the local levels. So Congress have only the dominant party in the national movement. It's inclusive by the natures. These factors are the contributed that we discussed above for the Congress dominance. Then socialist and ideological coalitions was there. It was the party who is formed in 1885 by the A.O. Hume. It was just a pressure group there, but it was the pressure group who is dominant by the educated, professional, and commercial classes. And it was a party after the election become there is a great eventual transmissions. After that, it was the party who is always dominant by the English speaking upper class, upper middle class, and urban class. But in even the every movement started by the Mahatma Gandhi, civil disobedience movement, and other movements, it sets its social base, it's by its social base, and it become the party of the different groups who related to the different fields like a blazer, working owner, middle, lower, upper class, and different classes. It become a platform or a space for them. And leadership was also turned from upper class to and upper class professionals to agriculture based labor and the ruler oriented persons. So by the time Congress brought transmissions into a rainbow like a socialist coalition broadly represented India's into the diversities. Congress party was party who have touch with the different classes, different caste, different religion, different languages, and other interested peoples. So mostly these different groups always take its identity in Congress. Then Congress was a group as individual holding the different types of the person. In Congress, there was the revolutionary persons or the persons who wants peace, conservative or the radical, extremist and the modern, rightist and leftist. Every types of persons is in the Congress, and it provides a number of groups, interest and political groups to participate in the national movement. And the pre-independence days, many organizations, many parties with own constitution, organization structures were allowed to work within the Congress. This is all about the Congress. And next party we will discuss about the other parties who have the dominant in the Indian elections or Indian democracies. Thank you.